Hi everyone, how you doing? It is Friday, and that means sometimes it's time for Moohead Radio. Yeah, during this time of the season, uh, I guess when few things are actually happening, that's when Twitter and everything else and online goes goofy. And so I decided to do a show on some shit that I'm really totally sick of. So if you're not in the mood to hear me bitch, then get the fuck out of here. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. And oh, Bronk just left, so I guess he's just not in for this. No, he's just screwing around, I'm sure. Uh, okay, you're gonna have to. Who is Mr. Clutch? You're gonna have to. Oh, Jerry West, is that Mr. Clutch? Yeah, I never called him Mr. Clutch. Very funny, Bronk. Bronk, are you there?
I'm here now. I'm here
Okay.
now. I hit the wrong button.
All right. So, here's some
Yeah.
things that I'm really fucking sick and tired of. All right. And it's going to start with Bronny James.
Okay. That's a good place to start.
It is a good place to start because, you know, he's finally spoken to the press and he's trying to step out from the shadow of his father. But any young man who, who grows up has to deal with this in one way or another, but sometimes it's really crazy difficult when your father is omnipresent media wise as LeBron James is. He wants people to stop lumping his name and career with his father's. I just want to have people know my name is Bronny James and not just being identified as LeBron James' son. I feel like that would be a great end goal. But you know something? It's not a goal. And it's not realistic because you're dealing with a bunch of fucking morons on the internet. And anything that he does will not be good enough. And he has to develop such a thick outer hide. And, I grew up in Canton, and my father was a big player in Canton. All right. I mean, politically, business wise. And what I did when I, finished my tutelage in doing radio sales, sales management, etc., I got the hell out of Canton. I moved up into general management in radio stations at 27 years of age, and I just wanted to be someplace else because you're never really going to establish your own identity unless you have the space to do it.
Correct.
And
I couldn't agree more, really.
And and it's not fair that people will always lump you in. I remember walking around when I was selling advertising, and my father was a polarizing figure because politically he was a Democrat in a Republican soil. And he was almost single-handedly responsible for ousting a Republican mayor who had been mayor at that time for over 20 years. Stanley Kamick was the mayor of Canton. And my father was responsible for, bringing that down. And there were a lot of people who didn't like him. And getting to know my father through the years, I understood where people were coming from. My father was a relentless worker and a person who really didn't concern himself with the way other people felt. He just did what he had to do. But if I had a dime for the times that people would come up to me and say, "Are you Jack's kid?" I mean, and at this point, I'm 25 years old. I'm not anybody's kid. But
Correct.
you take it in stride. And then they would say, they'd say, "You seem like a nice guy to be Jack's kid." And
Wow.
you see, and so that's how it
Ouch.
would always take that kind of a turn.
Wow.
So, in Jackson, Tennessee, nobody knew who in the hell my father was. And I realized that the people I worked for in Jackson, Tennessee, Bill and Jim Glassman, were far worse than anything my father had ever done. And that's part of life, too. Part of life is experiencing winning and losing. And you find a way to win within the providence of what is granted you. And if Bronny James thinks he's going to make a name for himself in the NBA, I think he's making a mistake personally.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he can just go to Jackson, Tennessee, or to Spokane, Washington, or all the other places I went to and make a name for himself. He's got this one fucking league. If he says, well, I'm going to play in Europe, he's a failure. And everybody will say on the internet, he's a failure. If he's playing basketball, he's a failure because he's never going to be as good as his father, and nobody could expect him to be because that's just an incredibly unique circumstance.
Yeah.
So, I understand the young man's feelings, but the smartest way is not to give more fuel to the idiots on the internet, but to find a path that is a realistic path. LeBron has a large and still burgeoning business. And it's my feeling that Maverick Carter and all the groups of people who hung out with LeBron when he was in high school made careers within LeBron's structure.
Okay. Yeah.
And my feeling is that Bronny gets educated as much as he can in the ways of business, and maybe he can be a better businessman as far as managing decisions and people than his father, which turned out to be the case with me. I was never going to have the charisma, the political drive, definitely not. But when it came to managing radio stations, that's, from the time that I was 16, I was just soaking everything up like a sponge. And I learned when I left town by making mistakes and doing things the wrong way. And I learned my way in the end. I sound like Frank Sinatra, but
You do.
But that's what it amounts to. Growing up is growing up, and it's finding your way of doing something, not somebody else's. So I would urge Bronny James to find his own path and his own road. And, there are a lot of other talents in the world than being the guy who, usurped the mayor of Canton. There's more that I could do with my life, and there's more he can do with his. The important thing is not what the people on the internet think, it's what Bronny thinks about Bronny. That's what, I sound like Dr. Phil, but that's really what it boils down to. So
I think that's an excellent point. He should go on and actually get his university degree and then get a, either job, outside of LeBron's businesses, or get a job with I can't, my name's blanking on that big sports agency people, BMI or TMI or whatever the fuck they're called, GMI. I don't know. Get a job with them and be an agent or something. I think you'd probably do that really well.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's a very, very young. He's a kid. So
Yeah,
I
he's
don't.
18, 19. Yeah.
I was one of the few who knew when I was 19 what I wanted to do. The problem is my family didn't want me to do it because they wanted me to take that next jump to being a doctor or a lawyer or a professional person, and so you find your way. And if you're good at what you do in your heart and in your mind, it's good enough. Don't be looking for accolades from anybody because people just don't throw roses. So that's the thing
And
with
the
Bronny.
roses that get thrown die. The accolades mean very little. It's what you can, do with yourself and feel and be able to sleep at night. That's the important thing.
Now, what's next that really is just shit?
Well,
I
I can
think it's-
predict one of them. It's got to be that celebrity softball game that happened the other.
Oh no. Oh no. No, I'm not going to talk about
You're
that.
not going to talk about that. Okay.
Nah. I mean,
I don't know now anyway. That's old
so
news.
here's something that is what I consider to be unfair and imbalanced.
That sounds like a good news channel.
That's right.
I'm going to watch them. Unfair and imbalanced.
Joe
Socialist
Burrow.
news.
Yeah. Joe Burrow. All right. Let's.
Joe Burrow.
Joe Burrow is a guy who is obviously a talented football player, and I'm not going to say that he's not.
Yeah.
But stop and think what Joe Burrow can get away with. All right.
Yeah.
Now, I want you to take this story and then to tell me what would be on the internet
Okay.
if it were Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to tell me because I haven't been following Joe Burrow.
Good.
I have so many other things to follow. So this is I'm going to be a neutral here.
All right, good. Here we go. Joe Burrow is excited for the challenge of coming back from a wrist injury that ended his 2023 season. But as injuries accumulate in his career, the fifth-year quarterback opened up about the mental aspect of continually recovering from significant injuries, with the wrist issue just the latest one he's had to overcome. Now, here's the quote, and I want everybody, not just in real time who's watching the program, but who's going to watch this archive. What would it be if Deshaun Watson said this same thing? Quote, whenever the injuries start to stack up, your football mortality kind of comes into the back of your mind, Burrow said. So that's definitely something I've thought about and something I have had to fight through. Burrow said it was tough to put a percentage on where he's at as far as coming back from the surgery in December to repair torn ligaments in his throwing wrist. Burrow did indicate that he'll be ready to go by the season. Now, can you imagine if Deshaun Watson, who's there doing his thing in camp right now, and the white quarterback, Joe Burrow, and he is contemplating his mortality? Can you imagine if Deshaun Watson said those words, they'd say, you could take his money and run. That's all this was a money grab.
Such a backlash should be unreal. Oh, my.
So, the quarterback, Burrow, signed a 5-year, $275 million extension last year.
How much was that?
$275 million.
275? Wow,
Yep.
That's more than other people.
Yep. So, and he is contemplating his mortality.
Well, that sounds like taking the money and running to me.
No, you know what it sounds like to me?
What does it sound like?
An invitation for teams to run every blitz scheme you can imagine because he's fucking scared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They say something. I mean, it was, I think the quote from Rocky 2 was Mick, and Mick saying to Rocky Balboa, what's happened to you is the worst thing that can happen to a fighter. You became civilized.
Yeah.
But it's expressed many different ways in boxing, and that is, if you lose your heart, get out.
Yeah. If you don't have your edge anymore,
That's right. And you could see it most recently in Deontay Wilder. All right, you could see
awful. I mean, he's worse than Tyson Fury.
He was afraid to throw his right hand, which is the weapon he has, for fear of getting hit with counter punches because he's been batted around by Tyson Fury. Got beaten up in his fight before this, and then of course just cold cocked would be a nice way of putting it by a 41-year-old Chinaman.
Yeah, I mean, that people say Fury's a bum, and yeah, he is, but Wilder's a bigger bum.
Well,
you
I
know?
mean, but in the end, he shouldn't even have been fighting because he's
Yeah.
not there mentally. So this is going to be an invitation for teams to run very complicated blitz schemes at Joe Burrow, because anytime he gets hurt, he may not get back up. And we saw what Cincinnati is without him.
Brittle as hell.
Yeah.
Absolutely brittle.
I mean, the Bengals wouldn't have a chance to go anywhere. And with that said, $275 million extension and the media protecting him when he says this stuff instead of reporting it the same way that it would be if Deshaun Watson had said it. What it amounts to is, what the fuck has he accomplished? He has won a Super Bowl. He's lost every big game he's been in, and he's been hurt his whole career.
He hasn't won dick outside of the university.
All right. And now this story will get, I'm going to one up the story.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Because this isn't going to be a long show, but it's structured in a certain way.
Can I do a very sideways joke here? You know who
Sure.
would be worse to have a wrist injury than Joe Burrow?
The hedgehog in the adult films. What was his name?
Terry Pluto. Imagine Terry Pluto with a wrist injury. That would be
Yeah.
devastating for him, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he'd be sidelined.
He'd be sidelined.
Yeah, and praying a whole hell of a lot more. Yeah, Double P knows exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
Yep. So if
You
you're
have a guy
really,
from Easter Island,
if you believe that, what has Joe Burrow done in his career? Well, Trevor Lawrence now has just become the highest paid player in NFL history with a 5-year, $275 million contract. It has a no trade clause, matches the size of Joe Burrow's record contract. What in the hell has Trevor Lawrence done? You know what he did?
Nothing.
He faked a goddamn ankle injury.
He did.
When he was just overwhelmed and he couldn't win.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he was back playing with an injury that should have lasted 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then he sucked anyway, and they were out. They were done. But he's white and he's got pretty hair.
He does. But
He hasn't
like
accomplished. I mean, if you compare him, the only thing he and Deshaun Watson have in common is Clemson.
Yeah.
They both play for Clemson. But if you look at Trevor Lawrence compared in the pros, compared to Deshaun Watson, it's not even a comparison. Trevor Lawrence isn't even close to being as good a quarterback. And I would say that he's a middling quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he's Kirk Cousins level, really, who again has a massive contract.
So why aren't people, and people, I mean, on the internet, fans and writers saying, well, he's sure as hell not worth that kind of contract. No trade clause. They're stuck with him. What if they were saying the same thing about these guys they say about Deshaun Watson every minute of every day? But they won't, because they're white. Now, I'm going to take a different spin on this.
Okay.
Am I going to make this strictly a racism thing? No. I'm going to make this a business thing. If you look at the population of the United States, what percentage is white? I don't even know at this point.
Probably about between 70 and 80.
So
that would be my guess.
I mean, that's the biggest potential audience, I mean, if you want to give, space and time to certain athletes or whatever, I mean, 80% of the audience is Caucasian. And so if you can find a Jerry West and you can make a logo out of the NBA based on him and not Will Chamberlain, for Christ's sake, the guy who scored 100 points in a game. If you can do that,
or Bill Russell,
this is what you want your league to be. And not so much just a league of white people, because there's lots of African-American players, but you got to have those people who are part of that 80% represented as being stars.
Yeah, I'll just read this out. I did a very quick Google. White Americans constitute the majority of 332 million people living in the United States, with 71% of the population in the 2020 United States Census, including 62% who identified as white alone.
All right,
Like,
now
so like all
let's.
white.
So, what about Hispanic and African American? What are the
Uh,
percentages?
well, it would obviously be, they would make up part of the 30. So let me
Obviously, but
carry on.
who's more, the Hispanics or the African Americans? And I know, it's hard to count because so many are flooding in over the borders. That's not what we're
Well,
talking about.
yeah, I don't want to misquote this. So
Yeah, I mean, look it up and let me know, because
yeah,
the fact of the matter is that there are still people who will make the argument that it's like Michael Jordan or LeBron James. Hell no, Larry Bird.
Larry Bird.
Yeah, they're always going to be
Hell.
people. They're going to be people. Trevor Lawrence isn't that good a quarterback. What I'm going to say is that what the Browns did was novel at the time they did it.
Yeah, they opened the floodgates.
They were but they were ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Fuck the floodgates.
Okay.
The other owners in the NFL have control over how they spend their money and what they're doing. And there's 31 more of them compared to Jimmy the Thief Haslam, right? They can do whatever they want to do. But look what they've done. When one goes, they all go. So now they're all spending all this money on quarterbacks, some of whom aren't even any good. So now Deshaun Watson has the 8th best contract in the NFL, since he's, all this bullshit that you heard from a so-called angry Baker Bro Browns fans and the media, oh, he doesn't deserve to get paid that much. Well, what about these other players?
Well, time's moved on. It's 3 years down the road, isn't it?
And that's what's happening.
Yep.
It's funny to think that, since Watson signed what was considered a historic contract that was 5-year, $230 million, $46 million annually, it's now the 8th highest at the position. It's incredible.
Yeah, Hispanics about 19%, Black is about 13%. Given the way we, as far as being alone, being separate.
Yeah.
Percentages.
So I just wanted to point out how skewed everything is. And I'm going to use now yet another example, because everything gets polarized, and I'm only interested in how good players are. And Deshaun Watson is a really great quarterback if he's healthy. If he's not healthy, he looks about the same to me sitting on the bench as Joe Burrow does.
Yeah.
So, comparing apples and apples, I would love to see Deshaun Watson be able to play an injury-free season so we can make a determination of what he has left.
So would I keep saying he's Schrodinger's quarterback. We don't know how good he is till we open up the box to see whether he's alive or dead.
Right. And yeah, it wasn't your money, folks.
It wasn't my money at all, really.
$230 million. You didn't pay into that unless you're still foolish and you're paying God only knows what for the NFL Sunday ticket. If you're stupid, God help your soul.
Yeah, I buy the field pass. So yeah, my soul's already gone anyway.
But, again, I have no problem with Trevor Lawrence making a living. I have no problem with Deshaun Watson making a living or Joe Burrow making a living.
It's the American way, God damn it.
But, at least be consistent in the way you report this shit. And that's what I'm really fucking sick and tired of, is that you always feel like, as a Cleveland Browns fan, not only are you defending yourself to cheering for the team, but you're fighting half of your own fan base.
Correct. If not more so. Yeah, and the same with the Guardians too. You still got these like 80% of Chief Wahoo nuts that just bang on about that all the time. I
Yeah,
don't give
we're
a
still
shit.
the Indians. We're still
Yeah,
the
we're still
Indians.
Indians. So fuck off.
Yeah, it's like, grow up. This doesn't affect you at all. You're just trying to get
No.
attention, and the best way is to yell fire in a crowded theater. But be that as it may, a story of three quarterbacks, none of them have won a Super Bowl. None of them has come close to winning a Super Bowl. Neither
Yeah.
has really done anything that would make them in the conversation as being an all-time great quarterback, and they're
No.
all getting paid over $230 million.
And at the moment, right in time, none of them would make the Hall of Fame. Right now, at this very moment, their careers all ended.
And now, next,
okay,
Caitlin Clark. And I'm going to, again, put all this together. I was sitting watching a WNBA game just last night.
Wow.
Yeah, I was eating dinner out and had a big screen. It was one of those sports bars. And there was a WNBA game playing. And, and I'll tell you, it's been a while since I watched WNBA because it used to be so fucking bad. I'll just be honest.
It was slow and bad shooting,
but it's a lot better now.
Okay.
And that doesn't have anything to do with Caitlin Clark. All right. Let's be real. These other women who have helped build the WNBA, it has nothing to do positively or negatively about Caitlin Clark. But again, Caitlin Clark came around at a time, just like Larry Bird did, to rescue the Caucasian 80% or 71% now we find out.
71%, yeah.
It, and becomes an instant marketability player to 71% of the population. It puts an incredible amount of pressure on her because she's not the best player in the WNBA, and she's not close right now. She is outstrengthed by women who have worked longer and harder in the gym than Caitlin. Caitlin looked great in women's college basketball, but it's a different level. And she's getting pushed around a bit. But the problem is that they're using her name, that 71%, to say, you see, that's what the WNBA really needed to become marketable, is one of us.
Wow.
And this has triggered the backlash of claims of racism in the WNBA, because it's the same people on the internet, the same group of twisted people in this country who are confusing a situation where, I mean, everybody in the WNBA should love Caitlin Clark. All right?
Yep.
Should love her, because this shines a light, whether you like it, the reason for it or not. If this shines a light on the WNBA, more people are watching WNBA games than ever before, and it's not even close. And if you're looking at the situations of the Trevor Lawrences and the Deshaun Watsons and the Joe Burrows, if you're a woman playing in the WNBA, you want to earn more money.
Yeah.
More games being televised, more revenue, more accessibility to the public at large, and there's more money to go around, and you can make a real living, maybe, instead of just being the dead weight that the NBA is carrying around to be, I guess, what would we say, politically correct?
I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Does the NBA sponsor the WNBA? I don't know the relationship between the two.
Well, sure. I mean, you wouldn't be able to use NBA if it wasn't affiliated.
Yeah,
they carry this.
I mean, yeah.
The NBA has carried the WNBA for years and years and years and years.
Okay.
And many fine women's players, I mean, they have dotted the map through the years, but the game just was plodding. It was all completely under the rim, and the shooting was just not very good.
But I think it's a bit like women's tennis. Remember growing up, like nobody watched tennis generally, and then McEnroe and Borg came around. But then Chris Evert came around, and people start watching women's tennis.
Yep.
And it was Chris Evert and then Martina Navratilova that really took women's tennis off. Back when it was just like Billie Jean King and 30 other people.
But Billie Jean King was really a big part of bringing things and politically getting professional tennis to start sharing some of the proceeds. And I mean, I got to be honest with you.
That's where WNBA is at, though. It's at the Billie Jean King, Chris Evert stage,
Watching men's tennis was a drag because they hit the ball so fast. The points, like at the major tournaments like Wimbledon, I mean, the courts were so fast, the points were over so quick. Women's rallies, it was really fascinating to watch Chrissy baseline it with Martina, who was, along with Billie Jean King, the first women who really charged the net, and it changed the whole look of women's tennis.
And glamorous.
And look how much money the women made for it. And that's what I want for the women in the WNBA. This is a reason to love Caitlin Clark, not a reason to hate on anybody. It's all about business. The people who own the teams, it's all about business. For the players, it's all about business. So just shut the fuck up and let these people make the living that they're entitled to make. And if this woman, Caitlin Clark, is backed by the 71%, let it be for the good of women's basketball. Now, Keith McLaughlin, this is like splitting hairs now.
Yeah.
You're talking about 200 versus 230 million. And you're sitting there and talking about, Lawrence, from what I read, has 200 million guaranteed. And it's like, are you serious? They can't trade the motherfucker unless the motherfucker agrees to a trade when the Jacksonville Jaguars go back to whatever it is that they were. And then nobody will pay him again unless he has a fantastic season. And he'll be looking to get away from Khan in Jacksonville because he doesn't want to move to England and play his games there. So there's that. Second of all, if you're willing, in for a penny, in for a pound, Keith, if you're going to guarantee 230 versus 200 mil, what difference does it make? You're sucked in. Trevor Lawrence is the entire future of the Jags now, as Burrow and his injured ass is for the Bengals. So I don't know why we split hairs in situations like this. It's all the same thing. It's inflation, and it's 32 wealthy, billionaire people who are owners in the NFL trying to prove that each one has a bigger dick in the shower.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It's a cartel. The NFL is a cartel of franchises.
Let the players get the benefit of making the money. Goodness gracious. Who cares which more historic? You know what's more historic? The quarterback who wins Super Bowls. That's what's historic.
Yeah, that's pretty historic.
Yeah, give me Tom Brady,
Well, even Mahomes. What's his contract? Maybe he should sit out the mini camp to raise his contract.
And you're right, Double P. All these years, the WNBA doesn't make any revenue. It's got a negative cash flow and it's been funded. All right.
Okay, I didn't know the
setup. Yeah. And that's the bottom line. And let's also be honest about two things. The number of African-American women athletes of the WNBA, from Cheryl Swoops on and all that, they were amongst the greatest of the years gone by, women's and WNBA players. And that's great. But that wasn't paying the bills. Now, was it? You get people to start tuning into these things, and people are suddenly going to make more money, and there's going to be more players. There's going to be more Caitlin Clarks, and there's going to be more African-American women. And, a lot of people just perceive that lesbianism is a huge part of the WNBA. And they said the same thing about the LPGA.
Yeah.
That because there were actually, and it was, literally lesbian fans going to these events.
Yeah.
And, catcalling some of the, attractive golfers. And, it's not easy to be a woman trying to make a living in professional sports. It's not easy. And, tennis was a great example of something that worked. It worked out. And I couldn't imagine all the years of, Wimbledon and the U.S. Open, in the women's division, if you didn't have the people like starting Billie Jean King and then Chrissy and then Martina and then Monica Seles.
Yeah.
And that it just goes from there. I mean, that there was a huge amount of interest in that, and that's the best thing. And Keith wants to argue the point with me. That's why we're here. The difference is Cleveland gave up 3 first-round picks, 3 other picks. Well, I mean, wait a minute. What? How can you make a comparison of that in a trade situation with a guy who was drafted 1 and hasn't done anything like Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, the other guys were never traded. They were never on the trade block. They could probably get millions more than what they've gotten.
You're using shell game logic here because they're 2 different circumstances. That was the only way Cleveland was going to get their hands on a talented quarterback like that.
Yeah, because that's irrelevant to 3 draft picks.
Because the Baker bros refused to understand that Baker can take you to a little better than a 500 record and bow out early. Yep. He's not a great quarterback. He's not a terrible quarterback. But
we've had a lot worse than Baker.
But he was a number one pick. Yeah. And you don't get when you get the number 1 pick because you had Hugh Jackson and all of that nonsense, you couldn't win a game. There has to be somebody up on the board who's worth picking. It's either a strong year for college quarterbacks coming out or it's not. And, I never thought that Trevor Lawrence was that big a deal. Now, even the, Dabo, the head coach, Sweeney of Clemson.
He likes Watson better than
he said this guy's going to be it's going to be the Michael Jordan of professional football. Correct. He just talked him up incessantly, and he didn't do that for Trevor Lawrence. Didn't stand in Trevor Lawrence's way of taking the Jaguars' money. And see, this guy's a Baker bro. You see? And Mayfield, who has more playoff wins than every quarterback on Cleveland roster combined. You want him? Oh, for God's sakes. You're stupid. I'm sorry. You're just fucking stupid.
Wow.
You can do just what, former listener of this program did and run off and become a Panthers fan.
And what team is he with now? I've forgotten. Tampa?
He's not even posting any more video, Brian, and I hope he's all right. I haven't heard from him lately. And I actually like Brian. Brian's kind of a testy character, but soft spot in my heart for Brian.
Well, the weather in Arizona has been 110 degrees for the past 2 months, so maybe he's melted.
But I mean, you always think that the sun shines more on the side of the street that you're not on. You always think the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. And that's what you are, Keith. You're a guy who's just going to keep pimping Baker. and you're happy with a 9-7 record with Tampa. You want to see what Tampa does this coming year? Just sit and wait, because Baker's never had 2 successive good years in a row. And I don't know what makes you think it's going to happen. I don't get it. You wouldn't be going anywhere. For God's sakes.
He's determined.
Hell with the money. Losing those first 3 rounders is what's going to kill us by trading for that weirdo.
It's all over with. They've already gone.
And there you have it.
About it.
And the guy names himself Tribe. Well, first of all, you're living in the past. You're living in the past, my man. Second of all, the money has nothing to do with you. You're absolutely right. And the team has nothing to do with you. You have no control over the destiny of the Cleveland Browns.
No.
And killing us? No, what's killing us is your stupidity. You got a team in first place, and you won't even call them by their name, you asswipe. This is what pisses me off. It's like, who would have thought that the Guardians would be this good?
No, I thought they would be absolute shit this year. I'll put my hand up.
And honestly, they were what, I think 42-23 is their record.
Yeah, and if they play 500 baseball and end up 20 games over at the end of September, they'll win the division.
And the fact of the matter is, Jose Ramirez is a certifiable star player, and Stephen Kwan is a certifiable star player, and they have some really, I think, even though Bybee, bad time to throw to Candelario, throw a changeup, but it happens. But they're getting good pitching, great bullpen, and timely hitting. And what else could you ask for? And you know what Cleveland fans are saying? It's the wind tunnel effect. People like you, Tribe, it's the wind tunnel effect. I'm not going to watch them because I'm not going to call them anything but the Indians. Yeah. But what have you ever done for Native Americans, you slimy piece of shit? You've done nothing. You've done nothing at all. Suddenly you become, bury my heart at Wounded Knee. But deep down, you're just a parrot. You're mimicking what you hear around you. And that's embarrassing.
Wow.
So, name calling. That's the best you can come up with is name calling?
Yeah, he's trying to take the high ground because I think
you're a big boy. Stupid. You're a big boy, Keith. You come out and, the bottom line is that your point of view is wrong. And it's just convoluted. Anybody who would sit there and say we have a better chance with Baker Mayfield and 3 first-round draft picks, and look what we've drafted. I don't know where you've been. Why don't you just tell me all the great offensive first-round draft picks by the Cleveland Browns?
Oh, no.
What? No.
Not that argument.
Tell me, Keith. You're the all-knowing one.
Wow.
Oh, this is not Believe. This is not an internet radio network founded on making wagers and gambling, Keith. You want to see Bernie Kosar going through the shit he's going through right now because those people had that bet put in his name, and Bernie Kosar is suing that Believe podcast company that is being shown on Bally Sports because Bally Sports has no fucking money and they can't afford real programming.
What's this story? I don't know what you're talking about here.
All right.
Please.
About a year and a half, 2 years ago, this Believe is the name of the it's a conglomeration of sports podcasts, and they went out and got a bunch of former athletes.
It's like a platform on a sports broadcast.
And Joshua Cribbs and his wife have a show.
Okay, I know nothing about this. All right.
Yeah, and they came out of nowhere, and they are solely sponsored by gambling sources. All right?
Good Lord.
Good Lord is right. And everything on the programming of that network has to involve wagering and gambling. And Bernie Kosar was doing a show as a sideline thing on this Believe network. And he was told that he needed to make a wager as part of his contract. Bernie said this is what's being alleged. Bernie claims that he didn't want to make that bet in his name. It got made in his name. And as a result, the Cleveland Browns fired him from his pregame activities with the Cleveland Browns organization.
Okay. I sort of half remember something happened to him, but I didn't know what the whole story was.
Yep.
This happened about a year ago, wasn't it?
No, this is happening now.
It's happening right now? Did he have
sir.
some problem about a year ago where he couldn't be on the TV?
I mean, this is going a lawsuit city, and it's
I don't read the Plain Dealer or Plan Dealer.
Yes, well, I'm not really
for that.
And this is the most damning thing, Keith. When Amsterdam agrees with you,
yeah, you gotta
run away. Yeah, 9-7 in the NFC. Somebody had to have a winning record, for Christ's sake. And I have nothing against Baker. Baker is Caitlin Clark. Let Baker make as much money as Baker can make and have a nice career. I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, he rejuvenated the whole Cleveland franchise by that one good rookie year. You know, you can make an argument that he upped the fan base and made the team more valuable.
Yeah, and you know something, Keith? If you saw Deshaun Watson on the field in the worst loss of the 2024 playoffs, we were playing with a 40-year-old quarterback. Blow me. Just bend down and blow me. Honest to God. What kind of stupidity is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing. Our defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, was man enough
to admit that he was wrong. Yeah,
that he fucked up. Strategy-wise, the defense was way over aggressive, and he acknowledged that. And I like honest people. So, as far as the Browns are concerned, they made the playoffs, which is more than a lot of other teams did. Yes, it was a disappointment, but I will point out what I pointed out before. The Browns are very skewed in their home record versus their road record.
Yeah.
And for the Houston Texans, because they won a shit division, and this is, again, this has nothing to do with the quality of their team, but the fact is they're a young team, and C.J. Stroud had a great year, take nothing away from him, and he may be the next great quarterback. I don't know. But what I do know is that they had no business being the home team.
Yeah.
That wouldn't happen in any other fucking sport.
It wouldn't happen in the NBA, would it?
No. And that, as much as anything, had to do God, going into that game, I knew it was. You look at the records and just look at the numbers that you're so fond of gambling on, Keith. I mean, the Browns just know. They weren't a good road team. They're like Jekyll and Hyde. That game plays in Cleveland is a different outcome. I guarantee you. But everybody was pressed. The defense was pressing too hard and was overcommitting. And Flacco was pressing and forcing balls in. And of course, what the 2 pick sixes were. We all watched the game, and why relive it?
Yeah, I mean, we were tired than we couldn't fit a pin in our ass,
Yeah. So now he's going to say the AFC North was considered the strongest. Yeah, we played each other and injured one another. I mean, it's like, hello.
Every team in the AFC North got crippled by the time December rolled around. Every single team.
Yep. And I'll be the first to admit, Baker Mayfield elevated the Cleveland Browns as far as he could elevate them. But he's undersized. He has a tendency to force the ball where it doesn't belong, and the ball sails.
He overreacts.
And he has no mobility. And so the ball will sail out of his hands, and he will throw some pretty ridiculous interceptions, to be honest with you. But, he did. He elevated a Browns team which had nowhere to go but up, quite honestly.
Yeah,
And
it's a very low bar that he elevated it from.
and he was better than the other quarterbacks who we,
Yeah,
who we try to forget their names because they were so
Tyrod
bad.
Taylor.
Yeah. Oh God. Just a bad group, and I'd be the first to admit that it's going to be a different year this year for the Browns because they have one of the hardest, if not the hardest schedule in the NFL. So
Yeah.
it is going to be a huge challenge for the Browns, no doubt. But hopefully they'll be a better football team with their regular quarterback playing instead of a 39-year-old quarterback who hadn't played since Hector was a pup. Hopefully that's
Well,
the
we
case.
got a better September than we had last year. We played the Cowboys, Jacksonville, Giants, and the Raiders this year. When last year, the first 4 games, you were wondering whether we were going to win any of them. So,
Yep. I mean, and I can argue this point for point, Keith. I mean, Watson was sacked more. And yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the offensive line issues, what the Browns did when they played their Jacoby Brissett in the past, it was just like a one-read offense.
yep.
What Deshaun Watson brings is the ability to stretch the field. It's not Deshaun Watson's fault that he doesn't have that they said, here you go. Here's Anthony Schwartz. He's fast. Doesn't know how to catch a ball. Doesn't know how to run a pattern. One man can only do so much. You got to put the right pieces on the field. The Browns and Stefanski with 3 tight ends. What do you expect is going to happen when nobody's open? You have to throw the ball away, or you hold on to the ball longer, hoping that something will open up downfield. And yes, even in Houston, where they had a bad offensive line, when he was throwing for 4,500 to 5,000 yards a season, he took more sacks because he was trying to make something happen, as opposed to the other guys who were game managers. All right. At least this year, you've got Jameis Winston, who's a legitimate backup. We didn't even have a legitimate backup, and it's not ripping on DTR, but he wasn't ready.
No, he's a young boy. Yes.
Anyway. Yeah.
What's the latest with Amari Cooper? Is he what's going on with him?
Amari Cooper is just doing again what any good businessman would do. I mean, Jimmy Haslam doesn't pay his rebate checks and screws people. And Amari Cooper saying, look, you want me to go through the rigmarole of training camp and, get injured. So I want my contract extension now.
Yeah.
And I don't blame him for that because you're one play away from the last play in your career.
Yeah.
So, and
at some point we're going to have to ban talking about Watson and contract and Watson and his character and all that. Hopefully, after we win a few games and they're leading the division, we can finally put this whole boring discussion to bed.
And this coming season could be a disaster because they're playing a better.
It could be a fucking disaster. It could be
Absolutely.
a massive disaster.
I mean, so who's to say? The thing is, I get sick and tired of people who make generalized judgments, and you have a guy in Baker Mayfield who's really done nothing. How did he do in the playoffs, Keith? Did he look familiar to you? He looked awful familiar to me. He's short. He gets passes batted at the line of scrimmage, can't scramble out of the pocket, and gets rid of the ball ultra fast because he knows he can't run. And that's that. That's who he is. And he can get hot. We know that. He can string together some incredibly impressive runs, but man, it goes the other way too.
Well, he's 29 years old now, everybody. Baker Mayfield's 29. He's not 22 or 23. He's been hurt like every single major section of his body's been smashed. So,
who gives a shit about 5,000 yards? When you win 4 games, that's exactly why Deshaun Watson wanted to leave. Hello? Yeah. I mean, he put up incredible numbers, but there was no offensive line in front of him. There was no team defense. They had no offensive line to block from a running game, and so he had to do it through throwing the football. I mean, I don't understand. Again, you're just looking at things so myopically. My goodness. And I'd be the first to admit we would not have made the playoffs if not for Joe Flacco. But you can't then turn around and say the worst playoff loss in the history because Flacco bit the big one. You can't have it both ways. Balance, please. My goodness. Well, you go ahead and become a Bucs fan. See how good they do. Okay, thanks. And Stroud played with the same offensive line. That would be amazing if the same offensive line was playing 5 years later. But again, it's a big blow me. It's a big blow me. Yeah, what can I tell you?
I don't think he even had Tunsil back then, Watson.
Yeah, and you know, double P, you know. Hey, Mr. B, how you doing, buddy? Nice to see you.
How about those Celtics, though? I actually watched the second half of the game the other night. They get up by 21, and then they nearly blow it. And then the fat guy from the Mavericks complains to the refs. Oh.
Well, have you ever seen a game in which Doncic fouled out with 4.5 minutes left to go in the game?
Yeah, that was the game the other night. Yeah.
Yep. Pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a crybaby.
Everybody knew who was going to win this. Everybody. Keith is asking, where is Mrs. Moohead? Oh, we're not going there. How long you been a viewer, Keith? Oh boy. Before I get out of here, it's and this will tie in with the whole thing as far as Bronny James and all athletes who have their day. The Mrs. Moohead and I were divorced like 5 years ago, buddy. So the fact that I can laugh about it, like John Candy, yeah, it'll tell you that all is well in Mr. Moohead's pasture. And
you moved on from that too. So there you go. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, and you know something, Keith? I love the stimulation, mental stimulation of doing podcasting. And, you know, this is all, it's all an act, man. I mean, there are people who, you know, now that I live half the year in Ohio, there are people who have run into me. Some of them were driving, and it wasn't very comfortable. And yeah, and a buggy and a horse trampled me. It was awful.
Run you over.
But in the end, when they meet me, they go, "You're nothing like you are on the podcast." And it's like, yeah, that's the thing. You know, it's
this is a very artificial situation. This podcast.
Yeah, and
not real life people.
And, you know, I'm losing weight, but I still want to be larger than life. You know, I don't, you know, if I were just me, it would be even more boring than it already is. Yeah. So, you know, so the final thing is strike now while the iron's hot, and that seems to be, you know, whether it's Baker Mayfield or whether it's Deshaun Watson or whether it's Trevor Lawrence or Joe Burrow. The Astros have released the former American League MVP, Jose Abreu, and they still owe him $30.8 million. That's exactly right, Amsterdam.
That's I mean, true.
Yeah. I mean, this is artificial. You know, it's all artificial.
I got a whole ocean between me and all you nutters, so you know I'm well protected.
Yeah, I think it's over too, Christopher. I think that they may give him a token, you know.
Oh, I think Boston stomps on their neck. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny if people, you know, say you're the one who does. Yeah, you can see I'm the same person, but no, you know.
Well,
I don't live and die sports like some sports fans do. I just kind of have a good time with it and like to play. I like to counterpunch. It's like I look at the way it's all being reported and how it's being twisted around, and I like to come back and twist it another way. But Jose Abreu, who was great with the White Sox, he was really a fine baseball player. Less than halfway through a $58.5 million deal that the Astros paid out for, he's done. He's gone. And the Astros have said, bye-bye. He's 37 now. And you think Francisco Lindor isn't doing also well with a 235 or whatever batting average with the Mets.
yeah.
Abreu was hitting 124.
Wow, that's grim.
14 for 113 at bats.
Oh,
2 home runs and 7 RBIs. He spent much of the time in the minors this year trying to fix his swing, but it was like, I think it was Joe Louis or Muhammad Ali, one of them, who said, there's only one undisputed champion, and that's Father Time, because Father Time wins in the end. 37 years old, your bat slows down. Last year with the Astros, his batting average plunged. He was a 280, 290, 300 hitter in his heyday with and with power and driving in over 100 runs with the White Sox. He was a 3-time All-Star during his 9 years with the White Sox, right? Recently as 2020, he was MVP. He was the AL Rookie of the Year in 2014. But he went down to 18 home runs and 90 ribbies, which would be considered good for some people, batting 237. But he's a career 283 hitter with 263 dingers and 960 RBIs. Houston owes him $30.8+ million. Wow. That's big business for you, right?
So he's batting like he's Sammy Sosa towards the end, man. That's as bad as Sosa was.
And respect for the man. He got his deal, and he played for Chicago all those years. What can I tell you? Anybody who was around any time close to the time Tony La Russa was there, you don't hear about Tony La Russa, do you? They lifted him. When they lifted him as manager, and I said, he's doing an awful lot of odd, strange things.
Oh, has he got?
I don't know. I still don't know. But when people fall off the face of the earth and you never hear about them again, you know who I'm worried about right now?
Dickie V?
No, George Foreman. I don't see George Foreman anymore.
Wow.
When fighters suddenly disappear, I get nervous. Right. And so it is with athletics at any rate. So that's what I have for you today, folks. And Keith, I hope you're not insulted, but a cow bites the hand that feeds him. And for 21 years, I've done this. And that is the slug line of Moohead Radio is cow bites the hand that feeds him. And the viewers, I love my viewers, every one of them. And I've had one or two actually over to my house, and I'd love to be able to meet more fans in Northeast Ohio, because anybody who takes the time to listen to my stupidity, has to be a friend. Okay. And the viewers are like family, and we have fun at people's expense all the time. But but that's the way it is.
Can we have Tommy Heinsohn previewing tonight's game?
It's over.
It's over.
Let me tell you something. Now that I got my fucking voice back, this one's over. And the way it's over is because the over-under bet that I just put in. It's over because there's going to be a lot of scoring in the game.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They can give one win to the road team. And yes, they're the road team even when they're playing in their home building, because
Yeah.
the Celtics are the real home team no matter where they play.
They are America's team, aren't they, Tommy?
And I'll tell you something else. You know what's doing it for the Celtics?
What?
The spirit of Kristaps Porzingis.
And Bailey Howell.
He doesn't have to play. That's how strong he is. All right, enough of that. And you know, I'm not going to disagree with you. It would work better for the NBA, you know.
Kyrie Irving didn't look too bad in the game that I actually watched.
Yeah, no, and
all right.
the NBA wants this to drag on a little longer, I think, for
Yeah,
goodness
so
sakes.
they
And
can
you know
make more
something,
money.
Keith? I'm glad you showed up today because it inspired me to being rude and vulgar, which
Yeah,
sure.
more cow-like than usual.
It proves that I care, you know. But no, we are welcome anytime. Next time I see you in here, Keith, you and I'll be the first one to tell you all good things because you know.
Get a cam on and join the show, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are tired of my fucking
Get
voice.
indoctrinated by coming on the air with us. And we don't attack. I don't attack hosts except Tony the Calf. And what the hell? The man fell asleep when he was getting a blowjob. You know,
which he admitted to. So
he did it. He was the one who told the story.
He told the story. So it's not like we were making that up.
You know, and the sad part of it is there are people who have trouble falling asleep, and this guy falls asleep during blowjobs.
Yeah.
Hard to imagine. All right. All right, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Enjoy your weekend and be careful if you're in Northeast Ohio. I'm Dick Coddard, and it's going to be hotter than Hades. I mean,
is that where you are, Dick?
I'm in Hades, and I'll tell you something. It's going to be nonstop 95-degree weather.
Oh, fucking hell.
And Beelzebub will be co-hosting the program with Mr. Moohead. You know, it's going to be hot as hell. Unknown what it's going to be like next week because this will be the hottest stretch in Northern Ohio, maybe historically. So,
really,
yeah, it's going to be really like every day 94, 95 degrees.
Well, you're not going to get 5,000 tornadoes along with it, are you?
No, it's not going to rain at all. It's just going to have 106-degree heat index. Yeah.
The heat dome. Yeah.
Nah, Keith. Nah, not you.
No.
We all could be assholes. We're sports fans.
We're Browns fans, for God's sakes.
For God's sakes. How do you think we ended up where we are? All right, everyone. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you back again on the other side on Monday. Until then, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads.
Something else better happens, and then we won't see you. So there you
go. Hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.
No.
Nah.